Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Arrow Discussions. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
And today we're finally going to talk about the 10th episode called Burned, which just came out last week, and is, of course, the... What's that?
I think it's Burned.
That's what I said, Burned.
Oh, I thought you said Burned. I'm sorry.
Which is the first episode coming back from the holiday break.
Are we talking about Mr. Burns? Sorry, I'm just going to keep derailing you.
Why do you keep saying that?
I don't know.
Oh, all right, anyway. So, Burn. Eric, start us off. What did you think about this one?
I think that this is proving the rule that if the creators of the show are not writing it, it is infinitely superior to when they are.
I thought this one was really good.
I did as well. This is not Garfield Lynns at all. Character background wise, but I thought what they did with Firefly was really, really cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna blow your mind when I'm gonna say that I was invested enough in this episode that I didn't even think about the fact that that character was based on somebody from the comics.
Oh, I
didn't even think about it. I had read somewhere that they were going to do Firefly. I didn't know Firefly's name was Garfield Lynns. It's not a character I know much about, and I was just kind of rolling with it.
Well, I know so little about Firefly. Actually, on one of the commercial breaks, because on Hulu you get like a 1-minute commercial break every time there's a commercial break. I looked up on Wikipedia just to see if this was like an origin at some point for him. Because I didn't know, I just knew what is in Nightfall, which is that he was like a pyrotechnics guy on movies, and that is his actual origin. I honestly, like, I knew so little, I didn't even know if this was one of his origins, like pre-Crisis or something. So
that's neat that they kind of reinvented a character like that, because we've been talking a lot about how we've been wanting them to go more just straight up comic book and have bad guys with costumes and things. I think this is actually, and this is again coming from somebody that didn't even think about, oh hey, that's Firefly. But now that you say that, I think maybe that's a pretty clever reinvention to make it more of a real world thing.
I think that this works better than any of the other reinventions they've tried. Obviously, Deadshot didn't work. There were some good ideas with the Royal Flush Gang, but I don't think they worked in execution. I think this is the best reinvention of a comic book character they've done yet.
Of course, I think the verdict is still out on some things like Deathstroke.
I actually want to mention
And I think
Deathstroke.
The verdict is still out on Deadshot, because I'm pretty sure he's not really dead.
Because Deathstroke shows up for 5 seconds again, doesn't say anything. I think I finally
Right.
placed what I don't like about him.
Oh, okay. How can you have an opinion on a guy that just stands there and wears a mask and doesn't do anything?
Because he just stands there and wears a mask. I've complained that he hasn't talked before, but
right.
But I think I finally placed it. It's that without him talking and having a personality, he just feels like Jason Voorhees. He's even kind of like big and kind of moves like Jason Voorhees. And it just kind of feels like Jason Voorhees is on the island. It's weird.
That's funny. I doubt they'll keep him that way forever, though. I think maybe they're just trying to play
at
it
this
where
point,
he hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet. Like, he's working for somebody else. Like,
at this point, he could have Bane's voice, and I'd be fine with it. Perhaps he's wondering why you shot a man with an arrow when you could use a gun.
Well, considering how much they've stolen from Nolan's Batman films, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah. I even thought for a second, I'm like, did they just rip off Dark Knight Rises with him with a cane and being out of action for a while? I was like, is that a rip? But then they didn't go anywhere near like what Rises did, so I'm not sure if that's a rip or not.
Getting back to the episode, I feel like they came back from the break and made an episode that feels like the show is ready to be on a while.
Oh, absolutely. I thought they made an episode. I think they had some interesting stuff early on, particularly 4 and 5. But I think this episode is probably the most adult that they've made yet. And I don't mean that in like it's explicitly violent, although they do certain things that I was surprised that they did. When he killed the fireman in the beginning, I was surprised by that. And then when he's got the fireman the second time and the hood guy is there, I was like, oh well, there's no way he's gonna die when the hero's there. Like that's they're not gonna let that happen. And then he just drops him in the fire. And then when he lights himself on fire at the end, I was shocked. 3 times they got me with that fire where I'm like, well, there's no way that they're gonna, and then they did, and I was really impressed by that. And I thought his reasoning was just believable enough, but just crazy enough that I totally bought it. As a motivation, like it's not a sane person's motivation, but it was intricate enough that I bought it.
Well, I did like what they did with Firefly, with the bad guy, although it was really kind of just the device to do some character stuff for Oliver, dealing with why he suddenly doesn't want to put on the costume after dealing with the Dark Archer and stuff. And I thought that I'll actually disagree with you to a point. I felt like they had to put that on the back burner, no pun intended, enough that there was one thing that kind of bugged me about it.
Didn't make puns.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't make. Well, I'm glad he didn't talk until the end. But
it's starting to heat up, isn't it?
What I thought was he'd be the opposite of Mr. Freeze.
You're not taking me to the crematorium.
One thing I really kind of wondered about though is that he gets to the end and he walks into the party and he wants to kill the fire chief. And clearly, that's the guy he blames for everything.
Right.
And I really wondered why he didn't go after him first and why he was knocking off all the other guys.
I think he was building to it.
Really, I don't know. I felt like they needed to talk more about what his motivation was for killing the other guys. Because they had nothing to do whatsoever with why he felt like
they didn't follow him in either.
I suppose that's fair. I felt like there wasn't enough discussion about it.
You know what my biggest problem with his backstory was?
What's that?
That he went to the hospital for months as a John Doe. I was like, he still has half his face. Somebody could have recognized him.
Yeah, that was weird. And I mean, there were only so many people in that building that I didn't understand why they didn't just try to face match him to all the people that they knew were there, because like 35 people died. I don't know how many people were actually in the building, but they knew how many firefighters there were, so at the very least they could have matched them to firefighters.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. There are some issues like that. What I really like is that the most about this thing is this particular episode is that I felt like it was doing the most for Oliver's character that we had in a single episode, and I really bought it. I mean, he's been a little back and forth in things where we're sort of like, okay, why are you killing people now? But then in the next episode you don't want to do that. But then in the next, you know what I mean? Where he's kind of back and forth. Here, I felt like everything was very clear with that, and that they're moving things in a really definitive direction of not just he's going to go from being a vigilante to being a superhero, but also he's got very clear reasons for doing that. And I really liked the idea of, on the island he had nothing to live for, and that makes it easier to both not mind dying, but also easier to kill people.
Right. And
the thematic parallel they draw with him and Firefly there, I think worked really, really well.
Yeah. And I really liked that Firefly just offs himself at the end. I thought that was really impressive for a CW show.
I didn't really. I mean, it was a fine ending. It was honestly, for me, it was a little bit predictable. I mean, like Smallville did stuff like that.
Did they?
Oh, sure.
But I don't know. This felt kind of darker. It wasn't like
darker in tone, certainly, but just the idea of, you've got a bad guy who can't go on, so he puts himself in a conveniently placed, well, not conveniently placed, but he takes the easy out, he jumps in the fire.
But I got the impression that was his plan all along. It wasn't just like, oh, I failed. Curses.
Well, you know what? That's a good point. I didn't think of that. And you're right. That would be kind of a textbook kind of plan for a guy like that, right? Where like that's a suicide run. I'm gonna kill all these people and then I'm going to kill myself.
But outside of that, because that's really been one of the things I've focused on with the show is the supervillains and all of that. just because after 10 years of Smallville, I'm kind of wanting a show that has costume supervillains. And I thought the fireman outfit worked as a villain costume, because it is kind of ominous. But outside of that, I really liked all the character stuff. I like the stuff with the mom, even though they're still trying to make us like her, and I'm still not really on her side.
Although, I'm sorry, before you go any further, can we talk about that for a minute?
Okay.
Because I felt like even that was a little bit better this time.
It was.
Because Thea is catching on to that by the end.
Right.
Did you notice that? I thought that was really cool, where it gets to the end and like she was like holding herself up in a room the whole episode because Walter is missing, and then at the end she just suddenly decides, no, I am going to go take Walter's place after all as the CEO of the company, just because I had this one conversation with Thea, and then Thea's like, that was too easy.
Right.
And I thought that worked really well. So, like, the episode is playing, and it's even having thematic components between Oliver's mom and himself, where she's having a hard time finding things to live for, and maybe wouldn't mind, dying right now, that sort of thing. Or is it all an act? And I feel like at the end, we get maybe this kind of inkling of, is the show trying, in this episode at least, to make us like her, or is she trying to dupe them into thinking that she's being normal?
Right.
So even that worked a lot better.
Can I tell you how much I love Dresden, or Detective Lance? I am loving the yo-yo
too,
of,
dude.
is he going to be the Commissioner Gordon or the J. Jonah Jameson? And they got me at the end.
They got me too. They got to the end, and when he hands her the phone back, I was like, that's too easy, guys. We're just gonna light switch it, and they did not light switch it. He's being very smart by letting her keep the phone so that he can track, Green Arrow, despite the fact that he just, saved a bunch of people. That was all really, really in his character, and I feel like he's now on the level with Diggle for me, where those two characters, I get them, I understand them, and they're not acting out of character.
I really like Diggle now that he's fully on board.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool that he's so on board. He's got to kind of talk Oliver back into putting on the costume and being a vigilante and really ripping into him.
Yeah,
I love that scene where. And I mean, this could have been easy drama, but I thought it totally worked given what's going on with Oliver, emotionally. I really like that scene where he's like, you just let me know when, if you want to stop being a vigilante and just run a bar. That was cool.
Although he did say the city needs the guy in the hood. I'm like, can we please just come up with a better name? Can we
please just start calling him Green Arrow and not pretend like that should have just been a joke?
I have this feeling that's going to run probably to the season finale. I feel like he'll take a name in the finale. I'm hoping.
I wouldn't, honestly, even now, I wouldn't put it past the show to just never give him a name.
I don't like that. Although I guess maybe it's more realistic. To just
I think they think it's more realistic. I think that as human beings, and especially in our society, we have a tendency to want to name things.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that the show is playing it up like, oh, it's too comic book, it's too gimmicky to just give these people names. I think it would be gimmicky if in the very first episode he goes, I'm a vigilante and I'm calling myself Green Arrow. But this far in, where people are constantly flailing to come up with a name for him, I mean, even as much as I hated this, even Clark, in the last couple seasons of Smallville, people picked a name for him that wasn't Superman. I mean, Red Blue Blur was a stupid name, but they all called him the same thing.
Right. Well, by the way, that newscaster probably does not have her job anymore.
That newscaster was ridiculous if we're talking about the thing at the end.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. That was maybe my least favorite thing in the episode, where she's like, because it was spelling everything out to us too much. He's going from vigilante to becoming a hero. I was like, really? All right. You sound like you should be
do you want to talk about
announcing a commercial for the show?
Do you want to talk about the Laurel? What's Merlin's first name? I can't remember.
Tommy.
Tommy. Do you want to talk about the Laurel Tommy thing?
Yeah. What about it?
I thought it was really cute this episode.
I actually did too. I was fine with it.
My favorite thing in the entire episode was when Ollie walks by her and goes, "So what's this about you monopolizing drawers?" I thought that was funny.
Yeah, at first I thought it was weird that was going to be kind of a subplot, but what I really liked about it was that it wasn't just a whole bunch of talk about, like, commitment and all of that. It turned into Tommy is actually kind of growing up some, and it was his idea to throw the fundraiser for the firefighters. Although, have you noticed that Tommy's answer to everything is fundraisers?
At Ollie's club, I found it a little unrealistic that firefighters would have a party at a rave club.
Yeah, it was, well, although it wasn't really a rave club yet, so maybe that's okay.
My dad's a volunteer firefighter, and he's never come back and been like, so I went to this fundraiser at a rave club. Maybe you have to be a full-fledged firefighter to go to those.
I felt like, once again, I think that story-wise, this was one of the if not the strongest episode. Everything really connected together. What I didn't really care for was the island stuff this episode, because I felt like it really was just there to remind us that he was on an island and wasn't really actually furthering any story.
I'm hoping that this, I guess it'll depend on next episode. I'm hoping that this is the beginning of him, like, surviving on his own. But I felt like after that guy got captured, I was ready for them to start having Ollie survive on his own, and then I just felt like he kind of like stumbled around finding dead bodies. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a clue that somebody is there killing them, or if the guy that's been training him is killing them, or what that's supposed to be, but he found like 2 or 3 dead bodies, right?
Yeah. The show, I think, is tonally really finding itself right now, with the exception of that, and I'm not convinced right now that it needs to be showing us island footage, except for episodes that are entirely set there.
Or where what's going on the island thematically matches what's going on in the episode.
Yeah, I don't like this inconsistent thing where sometimes we'll have an episode where we do a lot of island stuff and really really kind of like thematically parallel what's going on in the present, and then other points where it's just like we'll just flash back there for a couple minutes to kind of sort of show you something just to remind you he was there, and I felt like that's kind of what we had this episode.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
I'm not saying it has to be formulaic. I'm not always convinced that we need the footage we're getting there.
I'm hoping that with that guy gone, well, one, given that he found the dead bodies, I'm hoping we get an episode maybe mostly set on the island or solely set on the island, where he, or even just the flip where that's the A plot and the B plot is the stuff at home, where he's figuring out what's going on with those bodies, because he found like a severed arm. I'm wondering if maybe Deathstroke went rogue, or like I feel like they want to build to an actual story on the island there. I'm hoping that's where they're going. Or even if we just get, maybe an episode or two where we see Ollie using the skills that he's been trained in now to survive on his own and getting better. I felt like after that guy that's been training him got taken away, we've not really had anything, or we didn't really have anything in this episode. It was just him kind of stumbling around like, oh man, there's a body. Oh man, there's another body.
I mean, it feels so unnecessary right now that I have a difficult time remembering what happens in those scenes.
It's just him finding bodies.
You're talking about him finding bodies, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I guess that is what's happening. I'm having a hard time at this point. Maybe this is a good thing. Really looking at this as a comic book show, it feels like just a drama for me right now. You know what I mean? And what I'm latching onto is the character stuff, because they're getting that right now. Especially this episode. I like that now that, and I don't know exactly when everything is filmed, so I could be wrong about this, but they probably, at least while making this one and forward, know that they've been renewed already. Because I very much get the sense that they're like, okay, now we don't have to worry about getting in as much of the kind of mythology stuff in as possible, or not mythology, but personal history stuff, where it's like now we can actually kind of like take our time and tell stories.
Right.
And this was very much just we're going to tell a singular story. You could sit down and just watch this episode, but we're going to further some other stuff along. But this is going to be a cohesive narrative. I think this is the time that they've got that right the most.
Right. One thing that I think was a mistake with the island thing was because they cut to the island and I was ready for that to be the ending. Like there was going to be a cliffhanger ending on the island, and then there wasn't, and he went back. I thought that was weak. But hey, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. Next episode is written by the guy that wrote Encino Man, so I'm super excited for that.
Wow, that's interesting.
He also wrote episodes of Farscape.
Oh wow!
And the Invisible Man.
I saw Farscape.
And the Invisible Man. Did you ever see the Invisible Man?
I did.
Great, 2-season show from the early 2000s.
Well, I thought you meant the film. No.
I've
not ever seen that.
It's a show from the early 2000s where a guy gets the Invisible Man formula, and the government hires him to basically be like a covert ops thing.
Wow, was that any good?
Yeah, and it's got this really fun running gag that every couple episodes when he reports to them, because they're this super secret government organization, they're always hidden in a different government organization. So there's an episode where he tries to be government agent, and they're it says here you work for the agency for fishing, because they hide within other government organizations. It was a funny gag. It was an alright show. I mean, for what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was because next episode is I believe the first episode written by one sole writer, not a writer team. All the other episodes have been by two people, and so I just wanted to see what he's done. And apparently he wrote Encino Man.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm optimistic, man.
I am too. I'm really hoping. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 episodes where none of the creators have written in a row. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and also at the same time, I mean, you're right that does seem to be a running thing. But I also think that I'm not overestimating too much how just being able to relax that they're going to keep making the show is going to affect it.
Yeah, at least for the end of for the end of the season. Well, at least
because they can set up what they're gonna do, for next season. And like I said, they can kind of take their time and tell some singular stories.
Right.
That's what I want this show to be. I want them to have the overarching narrative, but for the most part have these kind of singular stories, because they did a really good job of that this episode.
Like the first couple of seasons of Buffy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I just feel like and now that the status quo is changing a little bit, they can really do that, given that Oliver is kind of finding himself more as to what kind of a superhero he's going to be. And so it's easier for him to just go out and solve cases. And I mean, I do like that he's still gonna go. I like the end of this. I like let's go hunting, where it's okay, we're kind of bringing back the old formula of I'm gonna go take out one of these guys every time, but he's gonna do it different now.
Right. I'm hoping that now that we're in the second half of the season, they're a little bit more confident. I'm hoping we get a couple more reoccurring characters in the villains. I'm hoping Deadshot comes back. I'm hoping we finally get Deathstroke in the city, or at least a full episode with him on the island where he's talking and stuff.
Well, and I know people don't like it when we do spoilers, so I won't say who, but I have read that they're going to introduce at least one other recurring character, maybe a villain, and that people that we've seen before are definitely coming back. So
I don't know who that is. I know that there's a villain showing up.
You're gonna get that.
I know that there's a villain from the comics showing up in 2 episodes, but I don't know if that's the character that's going to be a recurring character.
I don't know the answer to that either, although I think probably.
We can talk after. Speaking of villains, how is the petition for Clock King going?
Not quite as well as I would like. We've only had about 150 people sign it.
Oh, that's a bummer.
But tell your friends, because Clock King needs to be in the show. And like I said, we know that the show's going to be on for a while, and it's doing well.
Well,
we just saw them reinterpret Firefly in a really interesting, creative way. I'd love to see the same kind of thing done with Clock King, like because at first, they've tried these air quote realistic things, and sometimes like with the Royal Flush Gang, I'm like, that's kind of lame. I don't see why it's more realistic to make them like not an elite rich gang like they were before, because that was kind of what was fun about them.
Right.
But then like with Firefly, it totally worked. So I'd love to see it done with Clock King.
Well, I was actually looking into Clock King the other day, and he actually premiered as a Green Arrow villain.
Yeah, that was a lot of the reason that I wanted to do that.
Do you know what his name is?
He has a couple of names.
William Talkman.
Talkman, yeah.
That's up there with like Jervis Tetch. Like that's just awesome.
Oh yeah. Then later he's Tempest Fugit.
Oh yes, that's right. That's a good one too. All right.
I like that one.
Well, I really like this episode. I think this was a strong way to start the second season, or the second half of the first season.
Yeah, me too.
If this was Heroes, we'd call it Volume 2. I really liked it. I think it's definitely it's getting back to the show that I think it kind of started as. It kind of lost its way after episodes 4 and 5, and I think it's getting back to what I liked about the show. Because I can tell you, when I sat down, I was not super excited. I was kind of like, oh...
I wasn't either.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed this episode.
Well, but I'll even take that a little bit further for myself and say that at the beginning I thought it was good, it was solid, but it was kind of generic. It was just an okay show, and I'm seeing the potential for it being more than just an okay show.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, the stuff they did.
These characters are coming alive for me. I liked Laurel a lot this episode.
Yeah, me too. And I like Tommy this episode.
I think these actors are improving as actors too.
I meant to mention that. I think Ollie did a lot better this episode. I don't know exactly what it is. I felt like he was just in the role a bit better. Like he'd really found what works for him. I really liked it. I really hope that this is a sign of how the show is going to progress and grow, and not just another, that was a really good episode, now let's sit through 2 weeks of not very good.
That's absolutely right, and we just don't know that yet.
Yep.
So I guess we'll find out.
The real tell is going to be if the next 4 episodes are really good, and then the one where the creators write it again is bad. That's going to be the tell.
And watch that be the season finale. Watch that be a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to Arrow Discussions, and hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan.
We'll see you again in like 3 days. I'm Eric.
And we'll see you later.